الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين صدق الله مولانا العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى الجود والكرم وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم وسلم عليه. Last week I broadly summarized the contents of the Quran into 4 parts. That is not necessarily a comprehensive classification. It is a classification just to assist us. The reality is that we cannot classify a book which is beyond classification. The contents of it are beyond our knowledge. And so therefore, the attempt to classify it was merely a human attempt to be able to compartmentalize verses so that we can distinguish one from the other. The manner in which I compartmentalized the Quran was that the Quran is divided into 4 parts: Shariat, Tariqat, Haqiqat and Ma'rifat. When it comes to Shariat, that is the province of ulama, but that is limited to 500 verses. So if you imagine, ulama are only concerned as far as the world of Islamic law is concerned with 500 verses. After that, their pens are of no consequence simply because the remainder of the Quran is not for the purposes of law, of Sharia. It is a purpose nevertheless, but that's where we understand what is tariqah. Tariqah is not what we understand tariqah in the modern age, which is, as I said in my last lecture or last dars, the rise of cults, the rise of groups, where you wear one color topi, one color pagri, or one color kurta, or one color this, or you behave like this, or your group is like this. This is not tariqah. This is everything but not tariqah. In fact, it is perverse to tariqah. The whole idea of tariqah was to universalize the conduct of man, but not to restrict it. But of course, the modern tariqah as we understand it, and I often say in my lectures that the modern scene of people who call themselves Sufis or people of tariqah, 95 to 98% of them are misguided, because they actually don't understand what tariqah is. Forget about tariqah, they don't understand what Sharia is. So then tariqah is like, oh no, Sharia is not for us. That's one group of people, which is kufr. Then there's another group of people, they say, oh well, Sharia is for the small boys, for the big boys it's tariqah. What is tariqah? For them, tariqah is ritualism. Zikr, azkar, wazaif, awrad, chille, amriyat. This is, and piri muridi, just to the extent of kissing a shaykh's hands and attending course once a year. That is tariqah. But actually that has got nothing or very little to do with tariqah itself. The real word tariqah is ethics, is the internal law. That is not a law that binds us, but it is a law that guides us. That is a huge part of the Quran. And then there is a third part which is called haqiqat. And again, ulama simply cannot talk about this, because if they start to talk about it, it sometimes brings them at a crossroad with Sharia. Haqiqat, reality, brings them at a crossroad with Sharia. I'll explain this if you so wish in the questions and answers session. On the face of it, Sharia is harmonious with Haqiqat. But there are some occasions where Sharia says Haqiqat is something else, but Sharia is something else. Because Sharia and its goals are sometimes different to the goals of Haqiqat. Haqiqat is what it is. And I often give the example, just to reiterate, for those who weren't here, when you stop at a red light, there are no pedestrians, no cars. The idea of a red light was to protect pedestrians and fellow road users. But you are stood at a traffic light, there are no pedestrians and there are no cars. You go through on the basis that, well, I pose no danger to a pedestrian, I pose no danger to a car, so why am I breaking the law? Sharia says, in haqiqat there is no danger, you are in haqiqat there is no, you are not posing any danger to anyone, but sorry, the law is the law. When that light is red, you will stop there. There is no reasoning now here, oh, if so, but so. Haqiqat is different and Shariat is different. That's an example I've given you from a modern example, but there's many examples in the Quran where we will arrive and I will say, sorry, Shariat says this, Haqiqat says this. And I will give you examples in a short while. Then there is Ma'rifah. And Haqiqat was once upon a time the province of the people of Iman or the people of the Quran. يَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Today, the people of Iman are bankrupt of وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. We find Sir David Attenborough and National Geographic being at the head of and at the fountain of وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. But where are the Muslims in this regard? Or the people of the Quran, I should say. Bankrupt. They are busy reciting the Quran. What is the meaning of it? Don't know, don't care. But not don't care. No one will say don't care. They'll say don't know. I'm sorry, I'm not an Arab. Or I don't speak Arabic. But I already told you last time, if Arabic was the criterion of understanding the Quran, then no Arab on this earth would be misguided. Every Arab would be guided. But Arabs read this Quran like we read English, but they're still misguided. So just knowing the translation doesn't mean that you are guided by it. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ is an example of haqiqat in the Quran, and an invitation to the people of the Quran to explore the universe. But exploration is not our province anymore. The Ahlul Quran, one of their signs is exploration. Do we explore? No, we're not interested in exploration. We think that's the job of scientists, that's the job of others. But when the people of the Quran explored, they found depths which even science cannot find. What science calls science fiction was within the ambit of the people of the Quran. This is just summarizing what I said last week. And Ma'rifah. Who is Allah? Knowing Allah. What is the use knowing this book when you don't want to know the author of this book? The whole idea of this book is to know the author of this book. If you're not interested in him, you're just reading this to pass your time. Or as I say, sawabu isa li sawab. The idea is to get to understand him. Who is he? What does he want from us? Why is he guiding us like this? Why does he want us to behave in a certain way? After all, Allah and his personality, which is beyond our comprehension, Allah has gifted us with knowledge of his ma'rifah, and that's in the Quran. And we need to start to understand who is Allah. The ulama have projected, or some ulama have projected Allah to be this unjust and insensitive creator. But he is not unjust and he is not insensitive. Just because you can't understand something he does, like the other day I was asked, why does a child have to suffer so much? A child who is born into this world with leukemia, spends all its life suffering from leukemia and within a few years dies. What wrong did that child do that it deserved that? Now if you look at it from your eyes, then you will see, well, there's a wrong here. But when you understand Allah and his ma'rifah, you will understand that his the way he treats his creation is not only just, it is more than just, it is based on his fazl and his karam. So ma'rifah is very, very important. Let's move on to the next verse. And then we went through Surah Fatiha, which I said to you, you could pick up any verse of the Quran and you could tally it back to Surah Fatiha. Where is this verse in Surah Fatiha? You could deduct it from Surah Fatiha. So whenever you pick up a verse of the Quran, how can I find this in Surah Fatiha? Surah Fatiha is a summary of the whole Quran. But now Allah Azza wa Jal begins with the next surah, Alif Lam Mim. Alif Lam Mim is Huruf al-Muqatta'at. the meaning of which Allah and His Rasul have reserved for themselves. That doesn't mean to say they are not for guidance. If they were not for guidance, Allah would not put Alif Lam Mim in there. Is the Quran guidance for us or not? Yes. Then why is Alif Lam Mim there? The ulama have closed their doors, locked them, thrown the key away, sorry, I have business. Alif Lam Mim, no business. But Allah has inserted Alif Lam Mim, and yes, Alif Lam Mim is there for our guidance. But what guidance do we get from Alif Lam Mim? That is a very serious question you have to ask yourself. What guidance do I get from Huruf Muqatta'at? Are they just there for barakah for me to recite it? Of course there is barakah in reciting it. Alif is one, is 10 rewards, Lam is 10 rewards. And each letter of the Quran you recite, there is reward, 10 rewards. According to the hadith of Zain Ali Karamallahu Wajhul Kareem. But is it just sawab? But no. Alif Lam Mim, as my grandfather alayhi rahmah used to say, sometimes when two people talk to each other, they don't want the third person immediately to know the meaning, but what they do is for that time, they talk in Morse code. And Morse code is not that I don't want you to know, maybe that knowledge will be given to you later, but at this moment in time, this knowledge is reserved for Allah and His Rasul. But this is an invitation for us. Look, you can't explore this Quran only with your aql. Your aql is part of your journey, but it cannot be the only tool that you use in your journey to explore the Quran. There have to be more tools, and we'll talk about those tools in due course. So Alif Lam Mim. Let's just give one meaning of this, just as a taster, to show you that it does have meaning. Some people have, some Mufassirin have written, those who have been invested with the secrets of the Quran, they have said that in Arab tradition, initials, we even know, if a person's name is Muhammad Hussein, so his initial is MH. Yeah? So even in most languages, the initials are based on first letter of each word. But in the Arab tradition, if a person was a slave, to identify himself, he would not put his initial as his first letter. He would put his initial as his last letter. Yeah? Last letter. So that to distinguish the slave from the mawla, from the master, you would see the master would use the first letter of his word, and the slave would use the last letter. And this is just a mark of respect. This isn't that to promote slavery or something. This is just how a certain tradition was. And so therefore, if you look at these words, there's 3 letters. Alif, Lam and Mim. Alif stands for Allah, the master of masters. Mim is the Mim of Muhammad. Both are masters. He is the master as creator. Mim is the master as creation. He is the master of creation as creator, and he is the master of creation as creation. So you've got Allah and Muhammad. So where's the Lam? The Lam belongs to Jibreel. And Jibreel was the go-between between Allah and His Rasul. But to distinguish that neither was Jibreel superior to Allah, nor was he superior to Rasulullah. In fact, he was a servant of Allah and a servant of Rasulullah. That is why Alif, Lam, Mim, Alif for Allah, Lam for Jibreel, and Mim for Muhammad Rasulullah. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This Al-Kitab, that book, now, this translator, this translation, I just conveniently happened to be in front of me. This is from the King Fahd complex, Saudi Arabia. And he starts off Surah Baqarah, this translator, the catastrophic mistake, mashallah. He says, this is the book. Well, no, I'm sorry. The Quran says, Zalika, that is the book. Haza is this. So you can see that a government has sponsored this, Saudi Arabia, but a little kid who knows Arabic knows that Zalika is that and Haza is this. This is King Fahd Academy, you don't have to take my word for it, just pick it up. Yeah, and it's given free of charge if you go to Umrah. Well, up to the last time I found out. Zalika, so mashallah, they start the book off with a mistake in the translation. This is the book, that is the book. Listen, I want to make this very clear. When we talk, we choose our words very carefully. These are the words of Allah. Allah doesn't just, it'll do. Allah chooses His words very carefully. Allah could have said, Hazal Kitab, but why didn't Allah say, Zalikal Kitab? Allah knows the distinction between Haza and Zalika, but clearly this Arab or whoever Arabic speaking translator, he doesn't know. And so therefore, we must be very conscious of translations. Don't just accept it because some king has put his name behind it, or some country has put their name behind it. You have to be able to relate to the words of the Quran. Zalika al-Kitab, al-Kitab, the book. How do we know what book is being referred to here? Now, of course, everyone in brackets puts the Quran. But how do we know that this Al-Kitab, the book, relates to the Quran? You see, Allah could have said, Zalik al-Quran, la rayba fi. Or any word of the Quran, or Zalik al-Furqan, la rayba fi. You could have used any of the attributes of the Quran. But Al-Kitab, because there are many books, both that have come to us, and there are those books that have not come to us. Books that have come to us, Tawrat, Injil, Zabur, Sahaif, letters. But there are books that have not come to us. For example, I don't want to complicate this, but just to keep it simple. Lawh Mahfuz was not revealed to us in its original form. Lawh Mahfuz was, the Quran was revealed to us. So, Zalik al-Kitab, that book, that could refer to any book. But this is the majesty of the Quran, that when the Quran sits amongst all the books, either those that have been revealed or those that haven't been revealed, when we say the book, we know it refers to the one and only Quran. Because the Quran cannot be compared to any of the books. Technically, Lawh Mahfuz is also Al-Kitab. Yeah. On the Day of Judgment, Allah says, وَأَشْرَقَتِ الْأَرْضُ بِنُورِ رَبِّهَا, and the earth will be enlightened by the light of its Lord. Light of its Lord? We'll come on to that verse. That's a huge statement. The sun will be blasted, no longer in existence. How will this earth be lit? Through the light of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Despite that, Allah allows the sun to manifest its light up to the time when it explodes. Then Allah says, وَأَشْرَقَتِ الْأَرْضُ بِنُورِ رَبِّهَا وَوُضِعَ الْكِتَابَ. And then the book will open. Which book is this? Al-Kitab, Lawh Mahfuz. So there, Al-Kitab is used, and here, Al-Kitab is used. How do we distinguish between which Al-Kitab is being the subject of reference? Yeah. وَجِيَّ بِالنَّبِيِّينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ. And that verse carries on. And the Nabis and the Shuhada will come. Who are the Shuhada? Who are the Shuhada? Nabis, we know who they are. 124,000 approximately. Who are the Shuhada? Any guesses? وَجِيءَ بِالنَّبِيِّينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَأَشْرَقَتِ الْأَرْضُ بِنُورِ رَبِّهَا وَوُضِعَ الْكِتَابُ وَجِيءَ بِالنَّبِيِّينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ. وَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُمْ بِالْحَقِّ. And the next words give the meaning of who the shuhada are. Shuhada are angels who are witnesses. وَقُضِيَ फिर qada ki jayegi, there will be judgment. بَيْنَهُمْ بِالْحَقِّ. So the law mahfuz is a record of what happens, but it requires corroboration. It requires corroboration. Yet it is written by angels. Those angels will give evidence. But the Quran does not require corroboration. The Quran does not require to be testified. What is in the Quran is beyond the corroboration of man. Why? Because la rayba fi, it has no doubt in it. If there was, of course there is no doubt in Lawh Mahfuz, but despite the fact that there is no doubt in Lawh Mahfuz, وَجِيَ بِالنَّبِيِّينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ, the shuhada will come, وَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُمْ بِالْحَقِّ, and there will be qada between the people based on what is written in the book. But Lawh Mahfuz, and remember what I said about Lawh Mahfuz in my previous lectures, Lawh Mahfuz is ordained by Allah, is in existence by Allah's permission, and it is the personnel who service Lawh Mahfuz are all with Allah's permission, but despite that, corroboration is required. Now you'll say to me, well, that's not something that we need to really know. Yes, you do need to know. Why? Because there's a bigger point here. Oh, there's many points. You could talk on one letter or word for times to come. Those who are shuhada, they will give evidence as to what was written inside. In the event that there is a dispute, or in the event that anything requires corroboration, they will give evidence on the day of judgment. There will be a proper trial. But now, compare and evaluate that وَجِيَ بِالنَّبِيِّينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ for the Lawh Mahfuz. And now let's talk about the Ahl Quran. The Ahl Quran and the people of the Quran, the people who are associated to the Quran, they are also shuhada, but not the shaheed I'm referring to, where a person gives his life or her life in the way of Allah. I'm not referring to that shaheed. Or according to, shaheed in mind be someone who dies of, a stomach disease, or someone who dies in an accident. I'm not talking about that. There are a certain group of people who are referred to as shuhada in hadith literature. Who are they? They are the people of Iman. Me and you. That's why there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim where the Prophet ﷺ was passing a janazah, and some people were talking, and he heard what they were talking about the janazah, and he said, wajabat, 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 wajib ho gaya, wajib ho gaya, wajib ho gaya. It is now essential, it is obligatory, it is obligatory, 3 times. Now, this word obligatory, wujub and wajib, this is a legal word. I can't talk, I haven't got time to talk about this now. But in the anjuman of scholars, when they use the word wujub, it has a specific meaning. Wujub, wajib. The Prophet said, wajib ho gaya, wajib, kis pe wajib hua? It is wajib, it is wajib, it is wajib. If you think about this, there is so much in this one word that I could expand on that you would be amazed. But anyway, let's just stick to what we're saying. Wajib hua, wajib hua, wajib hua. The Sahaba were quiet. A few days later, another janazah was passing by. The Prophet ﷺ heard some of the people around the janazah talking, and he repeated ﷺ, wajabat, wajabat, wajabat. They said, again they heard him. On this occasion, Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu was stood in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said, Ma wajabat ya Rasulullah. Kya wajib hua? You repeated the same 3 words before, and now, what is wajib? He said, Man athnaytum bil khayri wajabat lahul jannah. those man athnaytum, those of you who praise the deceased with good words, bil khayri wajabat lahul jannah. Now Jannah is wajib upon that person. And in the first janazah, people were praising him. In the second janazah, and the 3 times is just for ta'keed, emphasis. You know, like certain things Sharia tells us to do for emphasis. So he said on the second janazah, people were talking against the mayyit. He said, Man athnaytum bisharri wajabat lahun nar. When you extol the bad virtues of someone, Jahannam is wajib upon you. And what is the illa? Why? Limaza, when you talk, why? Because, and the Prophet ﷺ explained, Antum shuhada'ullahu fil ard. You are the shuhada of Allah on this earth. So the Lawh Mahfuz, the 2 angels, they write, Lawh Mahfuz says something about you, but the people of Iman say something else about you. There are 2 shaheeds now. One group of angels who have clinical record of what you have done. And there's another group of shuhada. They don't have a clinical record, but they understand you to be a good person. And because they have given evidence, I should use the word non-clinical evidence. Non-clinical evidence. Here we have a contest between clinical evidence and non-clinical evidence. Forensic evidence and non-forensic evidence. But the victory lies not for the scientists. The victory lies for the mu'min. Why? Because his impression of that person, whether his books add up or not, whether his records reconcile or not, the fact that a person of Iman or a person of Quran has said he is good, wajabat lahul jannah, then Allah will disregard what is written in that book and He will say, no. The people, these shuhada say he is good, take him to Jannah. Subhanallah. 2 sets of shaheed. You won't find this tafsir in any Quran. How tafsir al-Quran bil Quran, tafsir al-Quran bil hadith. No one has done this tafsir. And the reason why no one has done it is because they all set their tram lines and they just stick in those tram lines. Yeah. And they didn't want to go out of there. But the Quran is an ocean. So Zalik al-Kitab doesn't refer to Lawh Mahfuz because that requires corroboration. And even if it is corroborated, it is not Kalam Akhir. It is not the determinative factor. If my record is sealed by virtue of what is written in Lawh Mahfuz, and I am determined in Jahannami, the fact that people of Iman give evidence in my favor, because of their association to the Quran. These angels are associated to Al-Kitab, Lawh Mahfuz. These Shuhada are associated to Al-Quran. The one who is, the Shaheed who is associated to Al-Quran, when he gives testimony, his testimony is beyond the testimony of even angels. Even the clinicians, even the forensic scientists who have, وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ زَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ زَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى أَنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءُ اللَّهِ أَنْتُمْ. And the misdaq of Antum, who is Antum? You all, not just Sahaba, all the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You all are Shuhada'u Allah fil ard. You are. So there's a competition between the Shuhada of the earth and the heavens. The ones of the heavens have a clinical record of what is there. The ones of the earth just have an impression. Allah says, no. These people who are Shuhada on the earth, they are related to the Quran. And by virtue of that relationship to the Quran, what comes out of their mouth, I do not deny. That's why when you fit the Quran against Lawh Mahfuz, there's no competition. The Quran is not even a drop. The Lawh Mahfuz is not even a drop in comparison to the Quran. The Quran is the most supreme book of all books. That is why ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, that book, al-Quran. And I don't want to get into the grammatical dimensions of this. Alif Lam Jinsi, Alif Lam Ahad Kharji, Alif Lam Ahad Zaini. I don't want to get into that. But Al-Kitab here refers to Al-Quran. La rayba fi, there's no doubt in it. There's no doubt in it. Why would Allah assert there is no doubt in it? Because even though there is no doubt in Law Mahfuz, but it still requires shuhada. But there is no doubt in it because why is there no doubt in it? Because this has come from the lips of Muhammad Rasulullah. It has come from the lips of Muhammad Rasulullah. What is that Shaykh of Iqbal? I don't remember. He says, Jabbariyo, Qahariyo, Quddusiyo, Jabrut, ye char anasir bante hain to banta hai Musalman, something like that. Then he says, everyone knows that the one who recites is the Qari. The one who recites the Quran is called the Qari. But very little people know that actually the Qari is the Quran. The Qari is the Quran. I don't remember that exact शेर. मैं अल्लामा से कुछ ज़्यादती नहीं करना चाहता कि उसके शेर को उल्टा सीधा करके पेश करूँ. If I don't remember a शेर, I will say it. Not that it makes a difference. I mean, I'm sure Allama will be very happy anyway. But what Allama is saying is that you don't realize you're a walking, talking Quran. Well, you should be a walking, talking Quran. Huh? That's why when Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, tell us about his khulq. Tell us about him. She said, radiallahu anha, she said, he is a walking, talking Quran. Everything in the Quran is about Rasulullah. So, how are we an emblem of the Quran? Well, we need to understand it. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. There is no doubt in it. There is two ways of this fee. This fee can be used in both sentences. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ, لَا رَيْب, up to there, that's it. There is no doubt that ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْب, there is no doubt in that book. And then you say, فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, in it is guidance for humans, for muttaqeen. Or you can read the fihi with la rayb fihi in it. So the fihi can have both objectives. Hudan lil muttaqin, it is guidance for muttaqin. This is where the ulama have a problem. They say, oh, we're being put out of business here, because it should have been Hudan lil ulama. What? Oh, the Sufiya, Hudan lil Sufiya. Or a certain group of people. Al-Muttaqeen. Al-Muttaqeen is based on taqwa. Now what is taqwa? If you look at different meanings of the Quran. Let's see what King, whatever his name is, whoever's in power. Well, let's see what he says. Guidance to those who are muttaqeen. Oh, that's a very good translation. Muttaqeen. He says guidance for who are muttaqeen. I don't think there's a word in English language called muttaqeen. But you know, if kebabs can be imported into English, then so can muttaqeen. Yeah. And then he puts in bracket, the pious believers of Islamic monotheism who fear Allah much. And then he puts in another brackets, or brackets in brackets, abstain from all kinds of sin and evil deeds which he has forgiven. And love Allah much. And then another bracket, perform all kinds of good deeds which he has ordained. Most translators here just say, those who fear Allah. I mean, that's quite sad, really. Because the concept of taqwa is actually misunderstood. If you go into linguistics, you can pick out any meaning. But actually, taqwa and a muttaqi is someone who has a relationship with Allah. Ittaqullah, have a relationship with Allah. But the way ulama portray it, fear Allah. There's nothing wrong with that word, fear Allah. But that doesn't do justice to the word taqwa. Taqwa isn't about scaring someone, oh, fear me. No. Allah doesn't operate based on fear. His protocols are based on love. But He warns. That warning is to generate enough fear in us so that we don't go. So that, for example, a mother or father says to their child, don't go to that room. There's a monster in that room. That doesn't mean to say that a parent doesn't like that child. It's just to guide that child. But the way it's portrayed sometimes in lectures is as if taqwa is some sort of whip upon someone. Oh, fear Allah. In fact, in Arabic lingo, the Arabs, when they want to say, to warn someone or when someone's doing wrong, they say ittaqullah. This is an Arabic expression. Say, we say careful. In English we say, oh, careful. Or, are you in your senses? What you do? But in Arabic, ittaqullah, fear Allah. It means come to your senses. What are you doing? Ittaqullah. So the concept of taqwa is misrepresented in many translations. Actually, taqwa, if you look at it in its essence, I don't have time to go into a full-blown examination of what taqwa is, but we can safely say taqwa is, and muttaqi are those who have a relationship with Allah. So, هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, it is guidance for those who have a relationship with Allah. Whether that relationship is them not doing what He has said, that's fine. Whether that relationship is them loving Him, that's also fine. Everyone has a relationship in their own way with Allah Azza wa Jal. But guidance is for, but there are certain litmus tests. And the people of Tafsir, up till now, I haven't encountered this. There may be, and I may well be wrong, but the people of Tafsir haven't really elaborated on, when you look at Tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran, on this concept of taqwa and certain litmus tests. Do you understand what litmus test is? To test the pH level of something, there is a litmus test. The alkalinity or acidity of something, there is a litmus test. So the Quran offers us a litmus test of whether we have taqwa within us. Because I claim I've got taqwa, you claim you've got taqwa, Joe Blogs claims he's got, well, not Joe Bloggs, Zain claims he's got taqwa. Well, actually Joe Blogs also, because he's saying, well, so what if I don't call myself a Muslim? I still love God. There are people, Joe Blogs out there with that thing. So, how do we measure? Because of course, any litmus test that we have has to come from the Quran. Tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran, using the one verse of the Quran to do tafsir of another. Or tafsir al-Quran bil-Hadith, using one hadith to do tafsir of a verse of the Quran. So, let's ask the Quran, oh Quran, please guide us as to a litmus test of whether we have taqwa within us or not. And the Quran guides us and says, وَمَن يُعَزِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. Subhanallah. وَمَن يُعَزِّمْ, and عَزَّمَ يُعَزِّمُ تَعْزِيمًا. And this is with mubalagha in it, with emphasis in it. وَمَن يُعَزِّمْ, and those who thoroughly, the word thoroughly is important to reflect the grammatical sensitivity of the verse, mubalagha. وَمَن يُعَزِّمْ, and those who respect and will respect. Respect, azzama yu'azzimu. Yu'azzimu is a present and the future tense. Those who respect and will continue to thoroughly respect. Or should I rephrase it? Those who thoroughly respect and continue to thoroughly respect, present and future, sha'air Allah, the signs of Allah, فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ, then inside them, in their heart, is taqwa. So now you have to ask yourself, what are sha'airullah? What is our relationship to sha'air? Well, for starters, we don't have to go very far. This Quran is sha'airullah. It's a sign of Allah, is it not? Now you see those people who respect it. How they respect it? Well, if you want to see people who respect the book, well, all you need to do is go to your local gurdwara, and you'll see how Sikhs respect their book. But you go to Saudi Arabia and you see how, na'uzubillah, some people who call themselves people of the Quran, how they respect this book, it's amongst their shoes. They put it in their bugle. This is respect. I saw one person, he was leaning against it and sleeping. Is this not a sign of Allah? وَمَنْ يُعَزِّمْ And yet, the same person will open the book and say, I know it off by heart. The same person will recite it and teach from it. But Allah says, don't go on his knowledge. Look how much he respects. Don't just go on knowledge. Knowledge is not the criterion only here. You look at his respect for the signs of Allah. Paradoxically, you have Haji Muhammad Hussain, I don't know him by the way, I'm just giving him as an example, who kisses the Quran 50 times, puts it on his heart, puts it on his shelf, takes it out once so often, reads it, and when someone passes away reads it, but he's not really interested in the meaning. So his respect is surface level. It's just surface level. Yeah, he'll put it in the highest shelf in the house. He'll kiss it with the most passionate of kisses. But when it comes to examining it, oh, it's not my job. I don't know. 101 excuses. Aql tayyar hai, so bhes badalti hai. Aql is very cunning, so it changes. One excuse or the other. But ta'zeem of this sign of Allah isn't just to kiss it, that's also respect. But it is also understanding the meaning. We have opposites. Those who understand or claim to understand the meaning and quote it, قال الله, قال الله, قال الله, they have no respect for it. And those who have respect for it, they're more interested in Naat Khans. They're not interested in the Quran. I'm not saying there's anything against Naat Khans. Fine, you can listen to as many Naats as you like to. But then what? When a Naat Khan says, jhoom, jhoom, even they don't understand. And when it comes to Quran, they say, one excuse for aqal ayyar hai, so bhes badalti hai. So, hudan lil muttaqin. We'll talk more about taqwa. Alladhina yu'minuna bil ghayb. Now, before I introduce this to you, I want you to listen very, very carefully. Because the tafsir I'm about to do, you won't find it in the tafsir. And it's very important that we understand this. Because diving in the deep end is easy. But before you dive, you need to understand what is now going to be said. Because if you don't understand this, what I'm about to tell you won't have any significance for you. Remember the first lecture I said? What's the use of me telling you about a street in Shanghai? I have no ambitions to become a taxi driver in Shanghai. So why do you tell me about a street in Shanghai? And what's China got to do with my life? I mean, I live in England. I mean, that's the English mentality, isn't it? Oh, England. Oh, what got to do with China? I don't need to know about China. That's very English mentality. The reality is, what has these verses got to do with you? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Every verse that you examine, you must ask yourself the question, how does this affect me? This author has written each verse of this Quran for you, individually you. And you have to ask yourself, how does this affect me? ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is an invitation for you. Listen, you're not going to go wrong if you follow this book. There's no doubt in it. But the key to it is not knowledge, necessarily. Knowledge is part of the process, but what unlocks this door is taqwa. Okay? So coming to the world of taqwa. However, now the next verses explain who the people of taqwa are. It gives alladina, those people. It gives explanation. But before you dive in, I want you to understand something very, very important. There is something in modern science called the psychostate. You could have a healthy psychostate, or you could have an unhealthy psychostate. The NHS is not interested in you until your psychostate reaches a point where you reach the point of section 10. And that's where you're inside. But up till you're not up to the point of section 10 of the Mental Health Act, 1985, the NHS is not interested in you. Sorry. We can't afford to be interested in you. But the problem is, how does one get to the stage of section 10 Mental Health Act? You have to have come on a certain journey. The system isn't interested. The system says, when you get to that stage, we'll deal with you. And by the way, we don't know what we're really talking about. We just trial and error. Because psychology is a relatively new science. So we'll just pump loads of medicines in you and see which one works. Yeah, most of them are sedative anyway. So the idea is to slow you down. Because one of the signs of a psychostate in the wrong, in the adverse sense, is a brain that ticks too fast. So therefore, we understand that in modern science there is a term called psychostate. Psychostate. Not psychiatric state. Psychiatric state is related to the physicality of the brain. So we're not talking about the physical dimension of the brain. The physical dimension of the brain is a matter of nature. We are talking about psychology. Psychology is the province of that science which is interested in behavior. You reached a certain conclusion, that conclusion was precipitated by behavior, by a thought process. So psychology is concerned with thought process and behavior. The two are intertwined. So, in the modern world, because psychology is very underdeveloped, if I say to someone, you're a psycho, would that be a praise or would that be a swear? Stop being psycho about this. But the reality is that except for Anbiya alayhimus salam, as a matter of law, who are exempt from psychological problems, all other non-prophets, by law, are amenable to psychological problems. Of course, there are a certain group amongst non-prophets who Allah has elevated so they don't have psychological problems, but who they are, you won't find them in Yale.com. You won't find them on Google. And they certainly won't put it on their CV that we don't have any psychological problems, because if anyone does, most likely he has psychological problems. But the Quran starts Surah Baqarah by talking about 3 psychostates. How many? 3 psychostates. It's very important. The whole of Baqarah, Surah Baqarah, starts off with psychology. A lesson in psychology. But of course we think, oh yes, this is talking about, mashallah, people of Iman, and 3 groups of people. 3 psychostates. 1, the psychostate of the people of Iman. Number 2, the psychostate or the psychology of the kuffar. And the 3rd group that the Quran refers to is the psychology of the munafiqeen. These are 3 groups amongst humans. Of course, you have the same groups amongst jinns. But the Quran takes great effort to talk about psychology. And so therefore, the first opening verses of Surah Baqarah is an emphasis on psychology. Psychostate. So Allah Azza wa Jal is now talking about the psychostate of the people of taqwa. The people of Iman meaning the people of taqwa. These are their attributes. it's very, very important to know the attributes of the people of taqwa and the attributes of the people of kufr and the attributes of people of nifaq, because if we don't know what those attributes are, then the likelihood is, ladies and gentlemen, we may end up rehearsing, mimicking, or copying those attributes, advertently or inadvertently, and that affects our life. So why do I need to know about munafiq and nifaq? Because if those attributes are in me, then I should be concerned about it. Our attitude is, in the day and age we live, we've got this artificial complex. I'm very knowledgeable. Nothing can come near me. I'm a great Sufi. Nothing can come in. This superiority complex. This complex we have. It's such an ugly complex. I've seen it. People don't say it from their mouth. It's from their complex. The way they look at people. And this complex is a complex which is catastrophic. Why? The Prophet ﷺ announced 11 signs of nifaq. How many signs? 11 signs of nifaq. The first person to come in the majesty of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu. Ya Rasulullah, is there any signs of nifaq in me? The Prophet said, no. If Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, and I don't need to go and praise him now because you know his praise. The word Umar comes with praise. Just mention the word Umar. There's so much praise attached to that word. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he is concerned about his psycho state. Ya Rasulullah, is there anything in my psycho state that mimics nifaq? The moral of the story is, if Sayyidina Umar is concerned about the welfare of his iman, then which dream world are we living in? So nifaq is a disease. Nifaq is a disease. If Sayyidina Umar is concerned about and yet, let me just be very frank with you, this blessed finger of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam pointed and said, Umar fil Jannah. There is no doubt that Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu is in any form of misapprehension whether he will go to Jannah or not. But despite being not a certified Jannati, I say chartered Jannati. Despite Sayyidina Umar being a chartered Jannati, he still says, Ya Rasulullah, is there any nifaq in me? If Sayyidina Umar is concerned about his state, then which world are we living in? No, I mean, I'm very really bothered. This artificial complex that we have around us. To verse number 20, 3 to 20. These are verses of psychology. And they talk about the psycho state of three groups of people. The Ahl Taqwa, the Ahl Kufr, and Ahl Nifaq. And I would like you to read this before the next time, so you can examine what are those attributes of Ahl Taqwa, and we will examine them. What are the attributes of Ahl Kufr, and what are the attributes of Ahl Nifaq? Because we could, by understanding those attributes, align ourselves. They are like mirrors. These next few verses, from 3 to 20, it is like, I refer to these verses like a mirror. They are a mirror for us. Is there any sign of taqwa within me? If so, how much? Is there any sign of kufr within me? Not kufr meaning kufr shari. The attributes of a kafir within me. Are there any attributes of the Ahl Nifaq in me? these next verses are a mirror. And inshallah we'll explore them in due course. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينَ. Any quick question before we go? Right. Inshallah, till after Ramadan Sharif. I hope you use this Ramadan Sharif as a platform to become closer to this greatest sign of Allah. This is a sha'ir. And respect of it doesn't just mean to say, recite it of course. You'll get sawab for it. But respect also means to start a relationship with it, to understand it, to say to the Quran, "Oh Quran, allow Allah to invest your love in my heart so that I can explore you and you can be my guide in this dunya, in my qabr and in the hereafter." وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينَ.
Someone just asked to confirm which verses you said.
Which verses? Surah Baqarah, verse number from الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. This is verse number 3 to verse number 20. If you read the translation and start to think about it from a psychology and the scene that I've set, talking about the attributes of different people, then hopefully you should have formed a certain understanding before next time, and then inshallah when we go into detail you'll enjoy the depth of these verses, inshallah. Aziz.
You have somebody else typing a question.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It's same good.
In the beginning of your Quran, you said that there are discoveries in the Quran that we haven't discovered yet. People who have read it. So can you give a small example, like how can it compare to science?
There are discoveries in the Quran.
Like how in science they say science fiction, but they're already discovered in the Quran. So could you give us a small example?
There are many examples in the Quran where, look, for example, ultrasound. What is an ultrasound? An ultrasound, a scientist will tell you, is a certain light that is emitted so that what is beyond the skin can be seen. That's ultrasound, isn't it? But there is no technology of ultrasound or even CT or even any technology around that can see through a brick wall. Am I right?
Yes.
The laws of quantum physics defy the capability of light, because for there to be a vision, a ru'ya, there has to be light. Whether that's whichever rays, alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays, there has to be a penetration of light. And if something blocks light, then the eye cannot penetrate through that, whether that's through technology or without technology, through ultrasound or without ultrasound. But the Quran talks about a more superior form of vision and says your understanding of seeing within skin is limited to lights. Because ultimately, what is ultrasound? It's a light, isn't it? I don't want to get too scientific, especially because my science is only GCSE level. But the reality is that what causes the capacity to see is ultimately, even a thermal imagery camera ultimately revolves around light, heat, light. But a thermal imagery camera cannot see through a brick wall. True? In fact, no camera on this earth can see through a brick wall. But the Quran talks about seeing through a brick wall. Isa alayhi salam says to his ummatis, your eye and my eye, they look the same. But don't think your eye is like my eye. Why? وَأُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا تَأْكُلُونَ. I can see what is in your stomach. The food that is in your stomach, my eye has ultrasonic capability that I can tell you what food you've eaten by looking at your stomach. But my eye is not limited just to that ultrasound technology which you have discovered today. Why? وَمَا تَدَّخِرُونَ فِي بُيُوتِكُمْ. And the stockpiles which you have in your homes. I can look through walls and I can tell you what you've stored in your storerooms. Or if I use modern language, I can tell you what's in your fridge. I mean, it's in a sense, تَدَّخِرُونَ فِي بُيُوتِكُمْ. In every house in the olden days, they used to have a special room where they used to store stuff. So Isa a.s. says, I can see the food there in your stomach, and I can see your food in your homes. This is the power of the super, hyper, ultrasonic vision of a person called Isa Ruhullah. This is science fiction for science, but for the Quran, it is a miracle of Isa Ruhullah. Yes.
Somebody has asked if you could go into a little detail in regards to the order of Alif Lam Mim, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written this in a specific order, and they've asked for just an insight into the beauty of the order.
I've already done that in the beginning. I think this person may have come in a bit later. The first part of my lecture I've already done that. But in any event, time does not allow for that now. Okay, inshallah. Please use this blessed month of Ramadan to ask Allah. You'll ask Allah many things this Ramadan. But this Ramadan, ask Allah, oh Allah, allow me to have a meaningful relationship with your book. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ.